Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security. This is meeting number 28, called for Monday, July 5, 2010. The purpose of the meeting today is pursuant to Standing Order 1082 to receive a briefing on the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, and specifically to hear from Richard B. Fadden, the Director of CSIS, to obtain a briefing and permit the committee members to ask questions. Mr. Fadden, before we turn to you, the custom of our committee is to give each person appearing a 10-minute opening statement, which we would be extending to you. But before we do that, we will be administering an oath, sir.
S'il vous plaît, répétez après moi. Je, affirmez votre nom.
Please repeat after me. I, Richard Fadden, swear to say in my testimony the truth, nothing but the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So, God willing, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fadden, you have the floor for 10 minutes, at which point after we will proceed to go to the question portion of the meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me start by introducing my two colleagues. On my left, I have Mr. Andy Ellis, who's the Assistant Director of Policy, and on my right, John Dunn, who is the Services Director General of Communications. I appreciate this opportunity to appear before the committee with a view to clarifying a number of issues that have arisen as a result of remarks I made during the CBC special on CSIS. I would propose to take a few minutes available to me to comment on the following. 1. CSIS's decision to be more open to the public. 2. The nature and scope of foreign interference in Canada. 3. An explanation of how I came to mention the possibility of 2 specific foreign interference cases. And 4. The extent to which anyone outside the service was aware of foreign interference in general and the 2 cases specifically. Let me start with why I believe Canadians should be more informed about the threats Canada faces. While the CSIS Act has set up a comprehensive package of accountability, oversight and control over CSIS, involving the Minister, the Federal Court, the Security and Intelligence Review Committee and the Inspector General, its activities, and especially the threats it must deal with, are relatively little known. Or to the extent they are known, these threats and activities arise in the context of specific cases or inquiries, where it is often difficult for the service to set out its perspective as the principal Canadian agency designated to protect the national security. With the exception of the horrific case of the Air India attack, a few other terrorist attacks, and some instances that were successfully prevented, for example, the Toronto 18, we have not seen much terrorism on Canadian soil, and we do not as a country often reflect on threats relative to espionage, terrorism and foreign interference. I would argue it is good public policy for Canadians to be more attuned to the threats that the country faces. At this point, Mr. Chairman, I would like to take a moment and explain to the committee how the most controversial part of the recent interview came to be in the public domain. I am referring to the cases of foreign interference. I made these remarks during a question and answer session following a speech I gave at the Royal Canadian Military Institute on Police Appreciation Night. This took place on March 24th of this year. As part of an agreement between the service and the broadcaster to develop a special broadcast commemorating the 25th anniversary of the service, we agreed they could film my visit to the RCMI. I thought the filming was limited to my speech, and so in answering a question, I provided a degree of granularity or detail to an audience of police, intelligence, and military experts that I would not have provided to the public. Confronted by the broadcaster in late June with the substance of the remarks recorded 3 months earlier, I felt I had little choice but to address them in a forthright manner. I agreed that this was not the optimal way in which to have this matter raised in public, and wished that it had turned out differently. Permettez-moi, Monsieur le Président, de soulever 2 points.
Let me, Mr. Chair, make 2 points. My comments did not in any way endanger national security, and it was entirely by inattention on my part that the details were made public. I do not agree with all the criticism of these remarks, but I regret any distress I might have caused and would not provide such detail again. Having said this, I stand by my general message on foreign interference. It is a concern and a threat. It is more common here and elsewhere than many think, and it is desirable that this threat should be known and discussed. And indeed, as I will reference again later, this matter is not new and has been raised in many of our recent public reports available to all Canadians. As I mentioned a few moments ago, the examples I gave did not and do not today meet the criteria for us to consider them to constitute threats to the security of Canada. As such, they had not and have not been briefed to the Minister of Public Safety, although he is generally aware of foreign interference in Canada. The same applies to the Privy Council Office.
This question was the issue of foreign interference. Let me take a few minutes to discuss its nature, scope, and extent. Parliament clearly recognized the existence of this problem at the time the CSIS Act was passed in 1984. Thus, CSIS has a clear mandate to investigate foreign interference as a potential threat to the security of Canada. I say potential because unlike cases of terrorism or espionage where the threat to national security is more immediate and where the ramifications can be extremely serious, for example, loss of life or loss of serious national secrets, foreign interference operates on a range of seriousness, and it is only the most serious cases which constitute clear threats to national security. I'll provide some examples in a couple of minutes. First, what is foreign interference? Simply put, it is an attempt by agents of a foreign state to influence the opinion, views, and decisions of Canadians with the aim to obtaining a political, policy, or economic advantage. The CSIS Act talks about the threat of foreign-influenced activities as, quote, activities within or relating to Canada that are detrimental to the interest of Canada and are clandestine or deceptive or involve a threat to any person. This is, of course, a broad definition that can involve many facets of behavior, but it's important to note that for behavior to be considered as true foreign influence, it must be directed against the interests of Canada and must be deceptive in nature. It
is also important to note that unlike terrorism or espionage that can result in more immediate damage to our national security, foreign influence is really more of a process of relationship building. This is not a simple binary black and white issue. We are dealing here with a spectrum of behavior by foreign entities that often start out innocently but later veer towards something that actually harms Canadian interests. This is a very subtle process. Central to our concerns with true foreign interference is the strong belief that decisions about Canada must be made by Canadians for Canadian reasons. And that means by those whose loyalty is to Canada, whether they have been here for generations or have just received their citizenship last week.
Are sometimes caught in this process of foreign interference unwittingly, and we assume from the outset that citizens are loyal. Our central concern is with what foreign powers are trying to do in Canada and why. Our service also understands that most Canadians have links with homelands, whether real or recent or remnants of our past, and as we are a remarkably diverse country. This is normal for a country that plays such a large role in the world and whose citizens come literally from everywhere. For our purposes today, I'll limit my remarks to foreign interference in the Canadian political process. A couple of explanatory points, Mr. Chairman. Unlike terrorism or espionage, there is not always a breach of the law. Like terrorism or espionage, however, at least some of the influence is covert or secretive. Unless the Canadian being influenced commits a specific violation of Canadian law, the issue of concerns to CSIS rather, is Canada's democratic process being affected secretly and by a foreign state. CSIS's objectives is threefold: to identify the foreign agent and to cause the influence to be stopped, to identify the person being influenced with a view to making the appropriate authorities aware, and 3, to generally protect Canadians from this sort of pressure. And 5, the persons being influenced are often Canadians with whom the foreign agent can relatively easily develop a relationship. Having set out the essential characteristics of foreign interference, let me try and illustrate the range of seriousness I mentioned earlier. Regular and overt diplomatic contacts typical in the business of international affairs do not constitute concern unless they become part of a longer-term plan or spectrum of behavior that is detrimental to the interests of Canada. Let me skip through a range of intermediate examples and set out one at the other end of the spectrum. Thus, a case which would be of interest to CSIS would involve an agent of a foreign power providing a Canadian over months or years with various benefits which become increasingly significant yet less and less open over time. This relationship includes an extensive exchange of views, opinions, and information slanted toward what the foreign state is interested in. At some point, consciously or not, the Canadian's views are changed and he or she begins to push or advance them as his or her own, thus potentially affecting decisions with which he or she is involved. The very important point is that foreign interference is intrinsically objectionable to Canada, whether or not it succeeds in attaining the objective of the foreign state, because such activity becomes detrimental to the interests of Canada. J'aimerais vous rappeler les points suivants, Monsieur.
In summary, I should like to leave you with the following points. National security is not always directly or immediately involved in cases of foreign interference. But where the possibility exists that there is harm to national security, and we have reason to suspect this is true, we must investigate. 2. CSIS's mandate is to protect Canadians and our democratic process from covert and deceptive influence. 3. The Canadians identified to be influenced can be anyone with the potential to affect decisions in a manner favorable to the foreign state.
Which emerged during the CBC special, I'd like to make 3 additional points. There was and is no immediate threat to the national security, so we are taking the time to complete our analysis before reporting to government. 2, given this, there was and is no need to brief the Minister until such time as CSIS has completed its analysis and discussed them interdepartmentally. And 3, only when these consultations are complete will the service brief the Minister of Public Security and make recommendations on how to proceed. Since the various media reports went to air, one aspect of the discussion of foreign interference that has surprised many in the security and intelligence community has been the general shock at the existence and extent of foreign interference in Canada and elsewhere. I would not wish to belabor the point, but as I indicated earlier, CSIS has been informing successive governments of the threat since its creation. Its last 5 annual reports have referred to it, and Parliament has annually granted funds for us to investigate foreign interference. It is a threat that is not unique to Canada. Our close allies are also targeted, and it is probably worth noting that our 2 review bodies have, over the years, regularly looked at and commented on our foreign interference investigation in the same manner that they review, for example, our terrorism case. Mr. Chairman, let me conclude by summarizing a few of the points I have tried to make this morning. 1. We do believe there is merit in Canadians being more informed about the threats to our national security. 2. Foreign interference, as set out in the CSIS Act, is a threat in Canada and a threat which I believe of which Canadians should be aware. 3. CSIS's principal interest in foreign interference is protecting Canadians in Canada against the efforts of foreign powers. 4. Anyone can be the subject of foreign influence, and often initially they are unwillingly or unwittingly so. 5. Foreign influence is not always a direct or obvious threat to national security, but rather a process that, over time, can covertly influence our democratic processes. 6. In respect of the 2 examples I gave, neither my minister nor the Privy Council Office was briefed on the cases, although they are generally aware of the threat of foreign interference. Mr. Chairman, I hope these remarks have been helpful. They have been drawn together on the basis of public and parliamentary comment, but I should be pleased to try and answer questions on any other matter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fadden. So the procedure, Mr. Fadden, as you are probably aware, is that we will alternate questions, beginning with the opposition, who will have 7 minutes to question you. Monsieur Proulx.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Merci. Good morning, gentlemen. Mr. Ellis, Mr. Dunn, Mr. Fadden. Mr. Fadden, thank you for being here today. I want to start by recognizing the distinguished career you've led in the public service, Mr. Fadden. Your contribution to this country has been immense, but we're here today because of comments you made in a nationally televised interview where you stated that at least 2 provincial cabinet ministers, a number of public servants and municipal government officials are under the control of foreign countries as part of espionage schemes. Canadians from all backgrounds want answers to lift the cloud that has been cast on them. I know that you've answered some of these questions, but I want to make sure that we understand each other very well. Est-ce que le Premier ministre
Is the Prime Minister, his advisor, his national security advisor, or any other person within the Prime Minister's office or PCO aware, or were they made aware of your concerns? Mr. Chairman, our concerns in general regarding foreign interference, yes. This is done on a routine basis. As to the two specific cases which are of interest to you, no, Mr. Chair. That said, during a meeting with the National Security Advisor, I did mention, give this person a heads up, indicating that there were some files that were of concern in this area, and I raised the issue in part because I wanted advice from PCO as to how to proceed if we were to find that there were indeed examples of unacceptable foreign interference. Mr. Fadden, you say in general there are some people that were aware. Who are these people? And when you had discussions with the National Security Advisor, when did that take place? And what did you tell them or her, this advisor specifically? Regarding that conversation with the advisor, I said something at some point, I cannot tell you in detail, that there are some cases before our service that involve foreign interference, and it would involve individuals in the provinces in political life, and we are completing the file. Because it did not concern federal authorities, I was unsure as to how to proceed. So I asked her whether she could reflect on the issue and let me know what would be the way to proceed if, once we have completed the file, the government decided to move forward. I cannot recall exactly when, but it was certainly at the beginning of this year. The beginning of the year 2010? Yes, thank you.
In the case of the couple of cabinet ministers, we're in the process of discussing with the centre how we're going to inform these provinces, end of quote. You mentioned that you discussed this with the National Security Advisor, and you also later clarified that the centre, as quoted by you, is the Privy Council office. Aside from the National Security Advisor, who in the Privy Council office, the Prime Minister's office, the Minister's office, National Security, were you discussing this with, and what did you tell them?
Mr. Chairman, no one.
The Minister responsible for CSIS, the Honourable Victase, has maintained an unseemly silence the past few weeks. Was he aware at any time, and we're not just talking of the day before your speech or the day before your interview or days before, but was he at all aware of the concerns that you raised in your speech and your CBC interview, sir?
Mr. Chairman, there are two parts to my answer. Was my minister, Mr. Tays, aware of our general concerns about foreign interference? Yes. Was he aware of the two specific cases that are the object of your attention? No. And as I said in my opening remarks, the reasons that we did not inform him is because we had not formed the final view that we wanted to go forward and inform the government. We had some further analysis to do, and as is usual in cases of these nature, we consult interdepartmentally before we move files forward with ministers.
Monsieur Fadden, aviez-vous l'autorisation?
Mr. Fadden, do you have the authority from anyone to issue these comments publicly? And I'm referring to the comments you made during the speech before the police officers in Toronto or before the CBC. Absolutely, Mr. Chair. I'm a member of a major corporation, and the public statements that are made are coordinated. So my speech before the Royal Canadian Military Institute, I had consulted colleagues on that. And similarly, the CBC had asked the service a number of months ago, even before I took office, as to whether it would be possible to have access to the service to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the service. Everyone had agreed. Mr. Fadden, when you state that the statements made are coordinated, I would imagine that in this work to coordinate this message, someone from PCO, someone from the Prime Minister's office, someone in Cabinet or the minister's office, who in these various offices is on the coordinating committee for communications? Well, Mr. Chair, there is no coordinating committee as such. I don't communicate that much so as to require the existence of a permanent or standing committee of this nature. There was my minister's office. As you know, it's not a common practice for agencies or departments to communicate directly with the Prime Minister's office, and that was not done by me in this case, neither the Minister's office nor PCO. Absolutely. The Minister's office, yes. PCO, yes. Who at the Minister's office? I have no idea. That was done for me. Could you convey that information to us through the chair? If I can find that information, I'll discuss the matter with the minister.
Go to Madame Morani. 7 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Bonjour.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, gentlemen. The National Security Advisor, what is her name? Marie-Lucie Morin. Mr. Chair. Very well. In your statement, you said that you were at the Royal Canadian Military Institute, you were delivering a speech, CBC was there, and you spoke to an audience, and you didn't think the event would be filmed. I'm having some difficulty in understanding this. You know that CBC is there, but you are having some difficulty imagining that your speech would be televised or filmed. You then proceed to say that you provided a degree of granularity or detail that would not be provided to an audience, that you would not have provided to the public. Yet you said this before the CBC. It's something somewhat irrational in that, because you're described as an intelligent, rational, extremely responsible individual. I don't understand. Mr. Chair, as I said in my remarks, as I stated in my remarks, I was fully aware of the fact that my speech was being filmed by the CBC. I had been asked when I arrived whether I would agree to answer a few questions. It was not in my action plan, if you will. It was something that I do on a regular basis. So I delivered the speech, and then questions were asked. And honestly, I think that as questions moved on, I lost the sense that I was being filmed. It's as simple as that. As I said, I regret this. But as I said, I did not say anything that was a risk to national security. The only regret that I have is the fact that it was reiterated. It was so discussed. What I was trying to do, Mr. Chair, this was a meeting that involved military, police, and intelligence experts, and there was some detail involved in that, so I discussed the matters with them. But, Mr. Fadden, you're well aware of the fact that you have essentially discredited a number of politicians, because by naming none of them, by not naming any province either, when you refer to provincial ministers, you are essentially pointing the finger at all provinces and all ministers. Are you conscious of the fact that all ministers are now being targeted by these comments, even though you're referring to two, and that municipal politicians in BC are also targeted essentially by these comments? You didn't even justify or provide any evidence. You just say this off the cuff, referring to foreign interference. Do you realize the impact this has on a fundamental basis on the entire political population? I think your colleague is exaggerating, Mr. Chair. If there were to be political interference in Canada, one would wonder where would this occur. It's not with a letter carrier. It's not for a person who works at the grocery store. It's clearly a person in the political arena in Canada. It should come as no surprise to you, nor as you, Mr. Chair. But I do say I regret that I said this in a public sphere. I said that I would not say these types of comments in the future either. Do you realize, Mr. Fadden, that your regrets issued now will in no way change the fact that some municipal elected officials and politicians in BC were affected by your comments, provincial ministers as well, and so long as you have not clarified this situation, you will have cast doubt on every person. Who are these traitors, Mr. Fadden? Who within the political elite today? Mr. Chair, the word used by the member is unacceptable. There was no treason. There was no violation of any laws. I referred to.
C'est loin d'être la trahison. C'est loin d'être un contrôle.
It's certainly not treason. It's not control. It's not corruption. So your colleague, Mr. Chair, is exaggerating. As I've stated, I regret the comments I made. But we are not talking about treason. We're not even talking about the act of breaking the law. But you are talking about ministers and elected representatives who work directly with foreign countries. You're referring to foreign interference, influence. This could have an effect on Canadian democracy, fundamental effect. You're pointing the finger at some people. You're saying that they have more allegiance to their homelands than to Canada. In fact, you define foreign interference in that way. So you're not using the word traitor. But I will use it because it does not apply, says Mr. Fadden. But it applies in what you're saying. Absolutely not, Mr. Chair, says Mr. Fadden. Yes, but that's what's horrible, Mr. Fadden. You don't realize what you've done. In other words, you could do the same thing in the future. What you did in October, in fact, by pointing the finger at NGOs and the media who dare speak about government policies in the area of terrorism. That's what you've done. You've been doing that since October 2009. You've done exactly the same type of things, so the same type of rhetoric. Yeah. And as far as the CBC is concerned, you're making mention of certain things. You're not willing to specify. Who are these ministers? I'm giving you an opportunity to do so here. Who are these ministers that are traitors of the Canadian nation? Mr. Chair, I entirely reject the notion of treason in this case. It's not even a violation of any act. As I said, it's not breaking the law. As I said to Mr. Mansbridge in the Mansbridge report, there was some influence. There was never any question of breaking the law or treason. Our primary concern in this case is to ensure that Canadian decisions are made by Canadians. We want to protect Canadians, and that's what we're trying to do. And not, yes, by Canadians, for Canadians, but not for foreign countries. That's correct. So not traitors to this nation. There is a technical definition of treason that you do not know and you are not using. Very well, Mr. Fadden. When you issued these statements at CBC, did PCO, Privy Council Office, the Minister of Public Safety, were these people aware of your communication lines? Mr. Chair, it's difficult to answer that question, but as I stated to Mr. Abreu, they were aware of what I did. They approved my speech. So they were aware of the fact that you were going to refer to political interference? Yes, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to point out that this is something the service has been doing for a number of years. My predecessor had done the same. Were they aware of the fact that you were going to target individuals without really naming them? Absolutely not.
Mr. Fadden, with your indulgence, I'm next on questions, and I will, as is the custom of the committee, I will ask my questions from the chair, if that's okay. Mr. Fadden, I want to start with repeating precisely what you said by putting your own words to you. You said on national television that, quote, there are several municipal politicians in British Columbia, and in at least 2 provinces there are ministers of the Crown who we think are under at least the general influence of a foreign government. You also said, with reference to cabinet ministers developing associations with foreign countries, once again I'll quote, we're now seeing in a couple of cases indications that they are, in fact, shifting their public policies as a reflection of that involvement with that particular country. Sir, I would put you that you've created great consternation and anxiety, unwarranted suspicion, and unfounded stain on every municipal elected official in British Columbia, and indeed every provincial cabinet minister in the country. Do you acknowledge that, sir?
No, sir, I do not. The reason I do not is because I was making a general statement about foreign interference. As I was saying a moment ago, I think it was in French, if foreign interference is to take place in this country, it has to take place with respect to people who have influence. So it should come as no surprise that it involves people who have political decision-making authority.
I hear you, sir. Now, you also said today, your comments were that you say now that there were no threats to the security of Canada. So I'm going to put you 2 comments that you made publicly. You said, I'm making this comment because I think it is a real danger that people are totally oblivious to this kind of issue. And you also said, quote, "It most definitely is a serious problem." So I put to you, sir, that Canadians are a little bit confused about whether or not you think there is or is not a serious problem with respect to politicians being under the influence of foreign governments. Is it serious or not?
I think, Mr. Chairman, that it is serious for any Canadian to be under the influence of a foreign state. And the reason I raised it, and I think the reason that I was given leave to raise it, is because it's a concern that's generally shared amongst the security and intelligence community. It is not something that any state would welcome.
Well, I think that's true, Mr. Fadden. Now, I'm going to put some pretty specific questions to you because I believe that you've made very serious allegations that have tarred a large number of innocent people and ethnic communities as well with suspicion, and I think you have an obligation to clear the air. Which provinces were you referring to, sir, when you made reference to 2 cabinet ministers?
That would be an operational matter that I'm unable to answer, Mr. Chairman.
Which municipalities, sir, were you referring to when you referred to British Columbia municipal politicians being under the influence of foreign governments?
Again, Mr. Chairman, an operational matter on which I cannot comment.
And who are the individuals that you were referring to, Mr. Fadden?
Again, Mr. Chairman, I'm unable to comment.
Now, Mr. Fadden, Mr. Mansbridge put this to you during your interview. He said, "But the director of CSIS suggesting there are politicians in this country, and now public servants as well, you're suggesting without naming them, will raise a few eyebrows. In fact, if I was a provincial cabinet minister, I would say, hey, who are you talking about? Because you're swiping us all with this." Mr. Fadden, meaning yes, I think that's fair. Mr. Fadden, as the head of CSIS, I take it, sir, that you do not want to be unfair. That is, an expectation of a person in your position would be that you would be fair to Canadians. Would you agree with that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So if you think that's fair, that provincial cabinet ministers and municipal politicians are unfairly swiped by being named, why won't you name who the people are who are truly under suspicion?
I will name them, Mr. Chairman, to the government. Under the general rubric of the CSIS Act, we are required to report to the government, and we will be doing so shortly. Okay, well, let's get to that, because a major contradiction I think that Canadians feel about your remarks concern these remarks. You said on national television, quote, "We just don't keep the information to ourselves. In the case of the couple of cabinet ministers, we're in the process of discussing with the centre how we're going to inform those provinces." Mansbridge. The centre being Fadden. Sorry, the Privy Council Office, the Prime Minister's Department. And regarding your investigation into foreign interference with municipal politicians, you've stated, quote, "They haven't really hidden their association, but what surprised us is that it's been so extensive over the years. And we're now seeing in a couple of cases indications that they are in fact shifting their public policies as a reflection of that involvement with that particular country." Mr. Fadden, this indicates to me that CSIS has been monitoring these individuals for some time now. Would I be correct? Mr. Chairman, that's a relatively difficult question to answer, not because I don't want to. We start with the what, whether or not somebody is under foreign influence.
With respect, Mr. Fadden, I'm asking a when question. When did CSIS start monitoring these individuals if you're finding that it's been extensive over the years and you're now seeing evidence? I just want to know approximately when you started monitoring these individuals.
I would say that it's a couple of years ago, but again, we're monitoring the threat, not people. It takes a long time, as I said in my remarks, to get a grip on whether or not there's a real threat or not.
Then when, sir, did the information first come to your attention that 2 cabinet ministers and municipal politicians in British Columbia were under the general influence of foreign governments?
I was given a very general briefing in late 2009 in which the service indicated that they had concerns. At the time, they had not formed a view as to whether or not it had met the threshold set out in the Act.
So when you said you don't keep that information to yourselves and you're in the process of discussing that with the Privy Council Office, when did you discuss that with the Privy Council Office, sir?
I think I answered that question in response to a question from Mr. Prue. I don't remember the exact time, but it was in early 2010.
So you did inform the Privy Council Office in early 2010
I told them exactly what I said earlier. I said I had a couple of cases that I was worried about. It may involve the provinces, and could I have your advice on how we would go about informing the provinces, because it's not something that we've had occasion to do previously.
Who, sir, did you speak to in the Privy Council Office?
The National Security Advisor.
So when you said the next day, I have not apprised the Privy Council Office of the cases I mentioned in the interview on CBC, and that CSIS has not deemed the cases to be of sufficient concern to bring them to the attention of provincial authorities, I take it, sir, that you had not told either the PCO or any provinces about the specific cases that you raised on television. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Now, I just want to talk briefly about the Chinese-Canadian community, because you have named China in two of your statements. You've mentioned the Confucius Institutes in most of the campuses across Canada, and you've made references that I think have disturbed the Chinese-Canadian community across this country. I'm going to ask you, sir, would you think it's appropriate to give an apology to the Chinese-Canadian community in this country for suggesting that their loyalties are suspect because, in particular, Chinese-Canadian politicians?
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't, because I think in those very, very rare instances where they might be covered by the preoccupations that they have, they are victims. I don't think that they are the problem. I think the foreign power is the problem. And the main reason that we are operating in this area is to protect Canadians from the foreign power. So I do not think an apology is necessary.
Thank you, Mr. McFadden. That's my time. Mr. McKenzie?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the panel for being here today. Mr. Fadden, I agree that foreign activity in Canada and the rest of the Western world is serious, and I agree that Canadians need to be educated about it. But that does not mean it is the job of CSIS to decide to publicize intelligence information. I cannot find the section of the CSIS Act that gives CSIS a mandate to launch a public relations campaign to promote its intelligence findings. Can you point me to something in the Act?
Mr. Chairman, let me repeat again. The circumstances in which all of this became public is one that I regret. I was talking, as I said, to an intelligence, a police, and a military audience under the Chatham House rules, and I lost track of the fact that this was being broadcast as part of an agreement we had with the CBC. So I start from the premise that this is not a desirable outcome. I think I've said that 3 or 4 times, Mr. Chairman. I do not think it is a desirable outcome. There is no specific provision in the Act which says that we are authorized to operate a public relations campaign, but I would draw your attention to the fact that this is contained in no departmental or service act. It's simply part of a general undertaking that we have. I would also note that we've undertaken this attempt to try and bring these matters to the attention of the public with the agreement both of my minister and of the Centre.
Okay. Do you think it CSIS's prerogative to decide what intelligence is supposed to be shared with the public?
In general terms, I think, Mr. Chairman, it's fair. I mean, we're required to issue an annual report. We have a website, and we try and put in here what we think we can. We are always operating under the constraint of not being able to discuss operational detail. I appreciate that's frustrating, but there's not much we can do about it. So generally speaking, I think when we're informing Canadians in one shape, form, or another about the problems and the threats in particular, in this case it's the threat of a foreign power unlawfully, unhelpfully influencing a Canadian, I think that's fair. Details, not fair.
Okay. And I draw your attention to Section 19 of the CSIS Act. This section restricts disclosure of, and I quote, information obtained in the performance of the duties and functions of the service under this Act, end quote. And how does that section square with your comments about the provincial cabinet ministers?
Let me just have a quick look at the Act. I'm sorry. I didn't know you were going to quote from it.
I'm sorry. Well, it does go on. It says that it shall not be disclosed by the service. Mm-hmm. Except in accordance with the section.
I think there's also a section in there which says that the minister can either directly or using the service as an agent reveal information that is acquired. I also believe that the thrust of Section 19 is not to deal with general threat, general analysis, but more specifically with operational details.
How much more time do we have, Chair? Okay. That's the 6th. We have a group of photographs that were posted by the Military Institute. If someone could just show those to Mr. Fadden. And would you agree from these photos the cameraman was obviously filming the entire event, not just your speech? He's got a lot of, they've posted a lot of photos on their website.
Yes, I've
So the
seen.
cameraman was fairly busy.
Absolutely, I've seen these, or haven't seen these, but I do not in the slightest deny that they were there before the speech, or that they were there during the speech. My only point is, I simply lost track of that during the course of my remarks.
Now, when you look at those photos, I think you've described the event as an audience of police, intelligence, and military experts. Is that right, when you look at those photographs?
Well, I don't really know who's there. There are certainly some military people, and there are a variety of others whom I can't identify, to be honest. But there were police there, there were a few intelligence people there, and there were clearly, as the uniform shows, some military personnel.
And perhaps members of the public?
I understand not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We also have another group of photographs taken, again, from the Military Institute's website. And if you would just take a look at them, I think it's fairly obvious, but I don't think it's limited to police, intelligence, and military experts.
Excuse me, Mr. McKenzie, there's a point of order.
Can we also have access to these photographs after Mr. Fadden?
Yes,
They're right off the Military Institute's website.
I was going to
I haven't got it here, Dave. We'll get you a copy. Thank you.
I was going to suggest if we could maybe at a break at a suitable time have copies made for all
We will.
members.
Please, Scott.
My point, Mr. Chairman, is that I was invited to the RCMI to give a speech. I was told it was members of the RCMI and guests invited for Police Appreciation Night.
Okay. But when you look at those, I think you would agree that the audience, in fact, was a cross-section of the community at large.
No, Mr. Chairman,
No?
I do not.
Okay.
It's unclear to me how, by looking at a person who's not in uniform, you could deduce that person isn't a policeman or an intelligence officer.
But equally, you couldn't assume they are.
Except that when we asked the RCMI, they indicated it was their membership and invited police.
Okay. How much more time? Okay. So in this case, you decided to share the information. It was a black tie reception, but for the next 3 months, you didn't notify any of the provincial governments that you were speaking about there?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, okay.
Again, because we were still working on our file. And again, Mr. Chairman, I was trying to give that audience a sense of granularity, which I don't think they took. They understood that's what I was doing.
Okay. Do you know who was at that black tie event where you provided a list of attendees?
To be honest, Mr. Chairman, I do not remember.
Okay. And do you know if they had security clearance, the people in attendance at that?
No, I assume they did not have security clearances, and as I said earlier in my comments, nothing that I said violates national security, and nothing that I said would require a security clearance. Just about everything I said, with the exception of those specific examples that you're referring to, which I again say I regret making, was in the public domain, put there either by the service, myself, or my predecessor. So there was no need for security clearances.
Okay. And I think that's why we're here, is because of those two exceptions. And I guess my next question would be, why was it important or appropriate to share the information with an audience of people you didn't know, but not with the affected provincial governments?
As I said earlier, Mr. Chairman, after we've concluded our analysis, we'll be going forward to government, and a decision will be made on whether or not to move forward with with notifying the provincial authorities.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sure that's your time, because I gave you extra time for the point of order. Mr. Kanya.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sir, first I just want to establish the timeline. March 24th, 2010 is when you had this dinner and you gave your speech, correct?
March 26th, yes.
26th, okay, thank you. And then the interview with Mr. Mansbridge was June 22nd, 2010.
I did two with Mr. Mansbridge, June 21st and June 22nd.
Okay. Now, before June 26th, and before you made those comments, were those specific comments reviewed, approved by anybody in the PMO, PCO, the Minister, the National Security Advisor, anybody at all?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So between March 26, 2010 and June 22nd, 2010, after you had made those comments, which obviously were known, did anybody in the PMO, PCO, National Security Advisor, or the Minister contact you and ask for details of these concerns between this March 26th date and when you gave your June 21st and June 22nd interviews?
No, Mr. Chairman, because I do not think they were aware of them. As I said earlier, the RCMI speech was meant to be traditionally under Chatham House rules. That was, of course, varied because the CBC was there. But my understanding is the CBC did not make any of this public, so none of the individuals you listed would have been aware.
Okay, fine. Now, you've had a distinguished career. One of the compliments given to you, Jamie Pitfield, the current Deputy Minister, indicated, not referring to you, not afraid to call it like he sees it. He's a serious, very serious person, very ethical guy, extremely professional. He takes responsibility seriously. He does the right thing. He's tough, but he's fair. All good things about you. And that's actually part of the concern, because you do indicate in a forthright manner, you say that you have concern that a couple of cabinet ministers, you refer to municipal officials as well, might be under influence. And you refer specifically in the interview to contacting and discussing with the centre how you're going to inform the provinces. And then quite specifically, you would define the centre as the Privy Council Office, the Prime Minister's Department, try and get a sense of how we would best let them know the problem. The Chair already read through that. But this is my question. You justified during the interview as to why you said this. I know you retracted part of this the next day, but you justified it, and you said, I'm making this comment because I think it's a real danger that people be totally oblivious to this kind of issue. So as the director of CSIS, and you've had a fine career, you're actually saying on national television that you think this is a real danger and people should be concerned about this. And I'm not saying you're right or wrong. I don't have the information that you have. I'm listening to what you're saying. And what I'm wondering is, in circumstances where you have said there's a real danger, and this is June 21st and June 22nd, has the Privy Council Office, or the Prime Minister's Office, or the Prime Minister, or the Minister, or the National Security Advisor called you in or contacted you and said anything to the effect of, you've said on national television that we have a real danger here in Canada. I want to know what you're talking about. I treat this seriously. This might be a problem. I'd like you to tell me on behalf of Canadians what you're talking about and whether we need to be doing anything to protect Canadians. Have they done that since this interview?
Mr. Chairman, I've had general discussions with my minister about this, and with the Privy Council Office. I indicated that the concerns that I expressed and that had been reported remained, in our view, potentially very serious. We were continuing our analysis, and that we would be moving the files forward very shortly.
Okay, but Mr. Fadden, that wasn't my question. My question was defining all of these people, the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's Office, the Privy Council Office, the National Security Advisor, and Minister Tays. Have any of those entities or individuals contacted you after your interviews and asked you to come in or speak with them and provide the information and a full explanation of what these real dangers are? Have they done their jobs and asked you to provide that information?
I think, Mr. Chairman, it's difficult to parse whether I gave them the information because it was attracting publicity, or whether we asked, or whether they asked me. But I want to be very clear. I have had a conversation with my minister and with the Privy Council Office about these cases. I've indicated they remain a concern and that they would be provided with a brief very shortly.
Okay. Once again, with greatest respect, that's not my question. My question was, from the dates of these interviews, June 21st and June 22nd, have any of those entities, and I'll repeat them, the Prime Minister's Office, the Prime Minister, the Privy Council Office, the National Security Advisor, or the Minister's Tays, or anybody on their behalf, contacted you after the interview to say, what are these real dangers? We want a report. We want you to tell us what they are so we can do our jobs to protect Canadians. Have they contacted you since your interviews?
No, because I contacted them first.
Okay, when did you contact them? Whom? And what did you say to them?
The Minister, Mr. Tays, and the National Security Advisor.
Okay. When did you contact both individuals, and what did you advise them?
I don't remember the exact date. It was very shortly after the interviews. I'd say a day or two.
Okay. And what did you tell them? And have you put anything in writing to any of these individuals whatsoever?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. What did you advise them?
I told them, as I said a moment ago, that we had a couple of cases that I had discussed that were worrisome, that we had almost completed our analysis, and that we would be briefing them formally very shortly.
And did you did this contact take place before or after you issued your retraction after the interview with Mr. Mansbridge?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure that I issued a retraction. In my mind, I was explaining exactly what had happened. When I spoke to Mr. Mansbridge, I was thinking of a conversation I had had with the National Security Advisor, and that's why I said I'd spoken to someone.
Call it what you wish, whether it's a retraction or clarification, whatever you want to call it. Did this contact take place with the Minister and the National Security Advisor before or after you issued that statement?
I believe it was after, Mr. Chairman.
You say you believe. Are you sure?
No, or I would have said so.
Okay, thank you very much. And can you provide the details of what you spoke with these individuals, the Minister and the National Security Advisor?
No, Mr. Chairman, I may not.
You mean you won't?
Mr. Chairman, there's a long-standing tradition acceptable by all committees of the House that discussions between officials and ministers are confidential.
That's fine. So what you're saying is you won't. I understand. Now, in terms of additional information, the individuals that you have commented upon, the cabinet ministers and the municipal officials, if you read through the various newspaper articles, emails, stories, what everybody is saying is if you have serious information, and we don't, once again, we don't know what it is in this committee, but if you have serious, credible information, we should be made aware of it, somebody should be doing something about it, and we should also be, in essence, clearing the persons that you're not referring to. So I'm going to ask you to provide the names of the individuals that you are referring to, the cabinet ministers, your municipal officials, and the information, the cause of concerns, because once again, you said here, real danger. So when you use that phraseology, you should be referring to the individuals, saying what the concerns are, and also that's also a method to make sure that the other people are not categorized in a way that isn't fair to them.
Mr. Chairman, as I'm sure you are aware, I am unable to do this. These are operational details. The law requires me to report to the government. I will be doing so very, very shortly. My understanding is that we will have a discussion and it will be decided how, what the next steps will be.
Do you have any time?
Ms. Block.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good morning and welcome, Mr. Fadden and Mr. Dunn and Mr. Ellis. Mr. Fadden, in earlier testimony today, you stated that you knew that your speech was being taped, but that as the Q&As went on, you lost the sense that the cameras were still rolling. So whether or not the cameras were still rolling, I'm wondering if you could please tell us why it's appropriate for the director of CSIS to tell an audience at a black tie event information that pertains to your job before you've informed the chain of command as appropriate.
Well, Mr. Chairman, as I've indicated on a couple of occasions already, clearly that was not the thing to do, and I regret it. I would not do so again. But I think the important part of all of this, Mr. Chairman, is to realize that I really didn't think I was giving away any state secrets because I was not. Foreign interference is a problem here that we've known about for a long time. And if foreign interference is going to be exercised on the Canadian political system, it has to be exercised by people who play in the political system. I was adding a level of detail that I should not have.
Did you also know that the Military Institute has posted an audio file of your remarks on its website?
I do.
Okay. I want to draw your attention to certain things said during the June 22nd CBC broadcast, and they may have been mentioned already, but I will repeat them. Peter Mansbridge began saying, well, the interview itself is unprecedented. He also said, speaking of your comments, it all came out during the extraordinary access CSIS gave to our former senior correspondent, Brian Stewart. Brian Stewart called it an exclusive interview, and later in the same broadcast, Peter Mansbridge said, Richard Fadden first made similar remarks in a recent speech, which we had exclusive access to. Did the CBC approach CSIS, or did CSIS approach the CBC?
My understanding, Mr. Chairman, is that the CBC approached the service many months ago, well before I was director, with the view of producing a special on the 25th anniversary of CSIS. I understand that that was discussed at length within the government at the time, and that approval in principle was given. After I was appointed director, the matter came up again, and I can't remember if it was we who raised it with them or them with us, but we thought it would be a useful thing to do, to have the 25th anniversary program. So the initial idea came from the CBC.
Okay, so 25th anniversary program. Do you think it is helpful for CSIS to be giving unprecedented, extraordinary, exclusive media briefings about the specific intelligence it collects?
Absolutely not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Did anyone from CSIS provide classified information to the CBC or any other media organization?
Absolutely not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Did you or anyone from CSIS provide information to the CBC or any other media on an off-the-record or on-background basis?
I certainly did not, either in my interviews with my discussions with Mr. Mansbridge or Mr. Stewart. The access that we provided, Mr. Chairman, to CSIS was quite organized and structured because we didn't want to risk giving away any operational information. So I would have to say, no, I do not believe that we did.
Okay. Could you find out for us? Could you check and then bring that information back to us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay. That's good. Keep going. Do I still have?
You have 1 minute left.
I have 1 minute. Okay. That's the question. No, that's not the question. I don't have a question. I have a question. Yeah. Undoubtedly, sir, you have been following the recent news from the U.S. regarding the case of alleged Russian spies. And I say alleged, although I read that some have actually confessed. According to papers filed in the U.S. District Court, the job of these agents was to search and develop ties in policy-making circles in the United States. Let me read briefly from a recent story which ran in the Vancouver Sun on June 29th.
You have 10 seconds, Ms. Block.
Okay. The FBI has broken up a Russian spy ring, some of whose members were posing as Canadian citizens, the Department of Justice announced Monday.
Thank you. Madame Morani, for 5 minutes.
Monsieur le Président. Monsieur...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fadden, I'd like to remind you that you are under oath. I'd like to know, and I won't ask for the names, I would like to know the provinces that were mentioned here. I cannot answer these questions, Mr. Chair. These are operational details I have not yet shared with the government. It is inappropriate to discuss the matter publicly. That said, you were willing to share certain things with the CBC. For one, that BC was being targeted, that there were some elected municipal politicians that were under influence. I think I've repeated a number of times, about a dozen times, that I regret this, and I will repeat it again to Ms. Mouani. Can you tell us whether Quebec is one of the provinces targeted? Mr. Chair, I cannot respond. All right. Are Quebec officials being targeted like those in BC? Mr. Chair, I cannot answer. The targeted ministers, are they all of a foreign origin? Or are they French Canadians or English-speaking Canadians, Irish origin? What are their origins? Mr. Chair, I cannot answer. These are operational details I cannot share with the committee. A small question then. You were saying earlier on that there were 2 files that were practically completed in terms of your analysis of them. That's correct. When they're practically done and you report to the minister, the investigation would be done? Are you issuing surveillance over these people? Are you listening to their cell phone conversations, internet, that type of thing? Intelligence collection is complete. I cannot tell you the details as to how we go about doing this. I'm sorry. I'm not asking you for state secrets here. I'm asking you, have there been warrants issued? Have you asked for warrants from the federal court to investigate on these people? Mr. Chair, are are all classified. What we ask from the federal court is all classified. We cannot discuss this matter with the committee. Okay, well, Mr. Fadden, once you've established your report, I would say that if we hear that you've made requests or applications to the federal court, that will mean that you have made specific application to the minister to make an application to the federal court. In other words, these cases are already known of the minister, which would mean that today, as we speak, you would have lied. I'm speculating. I'm just as you. I'm good in analysis, I can tell you. Mr. Chair, I can assure you that I am not lying to a committee, whether I am sworn in or not. Very well, we will see a report. We will see whether these people are being under surveillance, and if so, the minister would be aware. Do I have any further time, Mr. Chair? 2 minutes. 1 minute, 2 minutes. I have to say, Mr. Fadden, I'm just flabbergasted that a man of your statures, person who understands the machinery of government, who understands the rules, you say that there are rules you have to respect, that you would allow yourself, would give yourself permission to make these statements at a black tie event where there was certainly some wine involved. Was it before or after that? It was during a dinner, and I did not drink any wine. Well, at least you're safe on that count. Well, when you say that it's a lack of attention on your part, that this information was made public, I have to say, Mr. Fadden, I must admit I'm having difficulty believing that a man such as you could have done such a thing. I don't think I did not carry my duties the way I should have. I can assure you that national security was not jeopardized. Individuals were not identified. It was a lack of attention on my part. I was starting to take questions. I perhaps do not have as much experience as you do in this area. I simply did not pay attention enough, but national security was not breached. I did not say anything that would have made me susceptible to having violated any law. In October, though, when you made a speech, and I'm trying to find my notes here, you said you referred to NGOs, you referred to the media, you said some lines that must have been approved. October 29th, 2009. At an annual conference, you made a speech. You were referring again to NGOs, to the media, and referring to tourism. And there were some lines, the media lines. And what I heard at CBC was the same thing. So I'm having a great deal of difficulty believing that.
You're over time.
Okay, sorry.
Mr. Fadden?
The question, Mr. Chair, is simply that I would like to know, are you going to step down, Mr. Fadden? Because I don't think you're in the right position. I disagree. There is no reason for me to step down. I mentioned a small detail that in no way violates any law. I have said on a number of occasions, I regret it, but no, I will not step down. In closing, if you're...
And Mr. Calandri, I understand, are going to share the next 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Fadden, I think earlier you said the minister did not know you would be releasing this information on the two cabinet ministers from the two provinces. By releasing that information to the Military Institute, did you contravene Section 19 of the Act?
I don't think so, Mr. Chairman, because the information that we were talking about is very general in nature. Had I mentioned names, had I mentioned specific details, then I believe that I would have put myself at risk of violating the Act. But quite honestly, Mr. Chairman, if you look at our website, if you look at our annual reports, if you look at a variety of things that both I and other officers of the service have done over the years, this is not quite as extraordinary as everybody making it out to be. I understand that it was an unfortunate specificity on my part, but this is not quite as extraordinary as it's being made out to be.
So just so I understand and for clarification, the difference is that it was a general statement as opposed to naming, and for that reason,
Broadly speaking, yes, Mr. Chairman.
you would see that as Section 19 not being applicable in that regard,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
and subsection 3 not being applicable in under
You're quoting the Act again. And I
yeah
don't,
19.
do you have it?
Well, subsection 3 says the director shall, as soon as practical, after disclosure referred to in paragraph 2D is made, submit a report to the review committee with respect to the disclosure.
In my view, Mr. Chairman, it does not apply.
Because we're not talking about specific individuals.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Clandria.
But differently, it was not a disclosure.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Fadden, for being here. And of course, we know that espionage is not new and that Canada is certainly not immune to it. But I'd like to go back. I'd like to quote from the 1994 CSIS annual report, and I can imagine you don't have it in front of you, but I'll quote, a number of characteristics have emerged in this fragmented and destabilized global security intelligence environment. Apart from giving shape to the post-Cold War era, these trends call for flexibility and adaptation by the agencies charged with ensuring the security of Western nations. Among those trends are the following. Numerous countries maintain intelligence services that operate outside their own borders. Many are currently active against Canadian interests in Canada or abroad. With a shift from military to economic objectives, countries continue to use covert means to steal Canadian information and technology to enhance their economic advancement. Again, that was from the 1994 CSIS annual report. And if I'd like to just also quote from the 1997 CSIS annual report. Among the threats to the security of Canada identified in the CSIS Act are, quote, foreign influenced activities within or related to Canada that are detrimental to the interests of Canada and are clandestine or deceptive or involved a threat to any person. Such activities are exacerbated when representatives of foreign governments attempt to influence, persuade, coerce, or threaten former citizens now resident in Canada, and are made worse when two or more countries are competing for the loyalty of the same ethnic community in Canada. Foreign influenced activities are a violation of Canadian sovereignty and a threat to its citizens, and the service works through the courts to protect Canadians from such activities. So the threat of foreign influence is addressed in the CSIS Act itself. One can only conclude that if foreign influence was included in the original CSIS Act, that it has been recognized as a serious concern for some time. And I believe you mentioned that CSIS has been reporting on the threats basically since its inception. Can you tell us how the threat of undue foreign influence has actually evolved over the years?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, like its close colleague espionage, it's the sort of thing that varies a great deal over the years. It's quite fluid. It depends in large measure what's happening around the world as well as in Canada. To give an example that is in the public domain and that's been talked about a great deal, when there was a civil war in Sri Lanka, we had real concerns in this country about LTTE and what they were doing or not doing. And so for a brief period, there was an upswing in activity concerning foreign interference. Over the years, it has gone up and down depending upon particular circumstances. I think today that it's probably more than it was 10 or 15 years ago, but it's very hard to put a precise statistic to it. But we have had examples of this, as you said, virtually since the service was created.
Do you have more time, Mr. Chair?
Time. Monsieur Prou.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mr. Fadden,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
that you would be briefing the government very shortly. In your vocabulary, very shortly means?
I would say a matter of weeks, not months.
Weeks,
Yes, sir.
not months, therefore maximum 4 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You said a little while ago that you had asked the National Security Advisor for advice on how to treat the subject with provinces. Did you get any answers yet, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a preliminary answer. The National Security Advisor asked Public Safety, the Ministry of Public Safety, to look into this as well. Some work has been done. It's an area where there's actually a fair bit of activity because the provinces are more and more involved in material that we do, both in terms of security clearances, sharing of threats and whatnot. So there had been some work done on this that I wasn't really aware of. But I do understand that they've almost completed their work as well.
Monsieur Fadden, avez-vous discuté de votre témoignage?
Mr. Fadden, did you discuss your testimony here today with anyone, either in the Prime Minister's office, the PCO, Privy Council office, or at the Minister's office? Did you discuss your testimony today? Yes. I discussed the matter with my Minister's office and PCO, and naturally with my colleagues at the service. What did these officials ask you not to say here this morning? I don't think anyone said anything in that way. I was never told not to say anything. There was simply a discussion about the environment of what I said. There was an assessment of the comments that I made for their oversight, and it was general in nature. They did not recommend that you not say certain things. Did they focus on perhaps other issues that you should perhaps emphasize more? Generally, no, Mr. Chair. When the discussions started, based on the remarks that our discussion today, based on the remarks that I issued today, there was a focus on some emphasis on certain points rather than anything specific. Mr. Fadden, can you tell us, do you feel comfortable telling us the names of the countries you were referring to in your speech and in your interview? No, Mr. Chair. Not only because it is a matter of national security, but also there's an issue of international relations. Very well. The Premier of Ontario, Mr. McGuinty, and that of BC, Mr. Campbell, have asked that you provide further detail so that you could in some way allay some of these concerns. Did you discuss matters with Mr. McGuinty or Mr. Campbell since your interview? No, Mr. Chair. We have spoken to no one but the two that I mentioned to you. We want to complete our analysis and issue a report to government. Very well, then. You said that individuals had been under some surveillance on the part of the service. Are they still being watched by CSIS? Are you still monitoring, if you will? I think I mentioned earlier that information collection was complete, and we've got the intelligence. Now we're at the analysis phase.
Alarm concerning cyber espionage. How prepared is the Government of Canada to protect national security secrets and even the personal information of Canadian from cyber espionage, to your knowledge?
I think, Mr. Chairman, that it's a growing concern, and Canada's capacity to deal with this issue is growing. We don't have the lead on this, as you probably know, Mr. Chairman. But there has been reference to these matters, I think, in recent governmental statements, and I think it is truthful to say that we are certainly as well prepared as you can be in a technological world where the assaults change virtually daily.
Okay. In your interview, you stated, and I quote, "What I really worry about is there a terrorist cell somewhere in Canada that we don't know about?" End of quote. Given your level of concern, Mr. Fadden, how concerned should Canadians be about the possibility that they might be living next door to an unknown terrorist cell?
That's a very difficult question to answer, Mr. Chairman, because you don't know what you don't know. We have had very clear evidence in this country that there have been terrorists seeking to do harm. The Toronto 18 are the clear example. We're monitoring a number of other cases where we think there may be similar circumstances. Do I think that everybody needs to go, to their basement with an 18-day supply of food? Absolutely not. My point in raising this was simply to say that Canadians will need to know this. I think if Canadians know about this kind of threat, they would be inclined to let us know if they find anything that's worrisome.
Thank you. Mr. Ruppel for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fadden, and thank you for coming here today. It wasn't long ago that you were before this committee on May 11th, in fact. The Honourable Gary Filmon, Chair of the Security Intelligence Review Committee, also testified that day. And if you would indulge me for a minute for the benefit of those watching today that did not see that testimony that day, and I'm sure you don't have it in front of you, I would like to quote Mr. Filmon. Let me say first that having served on CERC for nearly 9 years, during which time I have been in regular contact with many organizations with similar mandates, I'm confident that Canada's model is and is recognized to be one of the strongest review functions in the world. This is not to say that changes and improvements are not possible, but simply that we have in CERC an effective tool for helping to ensure the accountability of Canada's Security Intelligence Agency, CSIS. As I'm sure you are aware, CERC came into being at the same time that Canada created CSIS, its Civilian Security Intelligence Service. With the passage of CSIS Act in 1984, Canada became one of the first democratic governments in the world to establish a detailed legal framework for the operation of its security services. It is equally significant that the CSIS Act created a framework to make CSIS accountable in exercising its powers. Specifically, the CSIS Act defines the mandate and limits the state's power to conduct security intelligence. It also spells out how the service's work is to be monitored through a rigorous system of political and judicial controls, including 2 review bodies, each with a distinct mandate to watch over the new agency. I draw your attention to this because it's important to appreciate the context in which CSIS operates. That same day you testified, the central duties and functions of CSIS are defined in Section 12 of the Act. We are to collect, analyze, and retain information and intelligence respecting activities that could reasonably and be suspected of being security threats to Canada. We call this security intelligence. We are then to report to and advise the government on that intelligence. Based on those general powers, CSIS collects intelligence on a variety of specific threats to Canadian security, defined broadly in our Act and refined by directives from the Cabinet and the Minister of Public Safety. These include terrorism, espionage, and foreign influence activities. I think we can all accept the people of CSIS are dedicated to the protection of Canada's national interests and the safety of all Canadians. Director, my question is this. With that level of monitoring by outside actors, why would you feel it is necessary to speak about something as sensitive as foreign influence? What's to be gained?
Chairman, I think because despite that quite comprehensive system of oversight and review, there is not a lot of discussion in Canada about espionage or terrorism or foreign influence. It's not, in fact, the duty of the Inspector General or of the CERC to report on these things publicly. Their main job is to ensure that we comply with the law and ministerial direction. There are public reports that are issued, but they're pretty general. So our view, and I want to stress that it's our view, it's not just my view, it's been the view of the service for some time now, there is a benefit to Canadians understanding that we are not for some reason protected from attempts at espionage, foreign influence, or terrorism, partially because we think this is a democracy and people have a right to know. Having said that, I want to be very clear that this is a matter that we've discussed quite broadly and it's shared amongst the security and intelligence community. We also think that if people know of these threats and any of these come to the attention of particular individuals, they may help us out by telling us about them or by going to the police.
Okay. And how do you feel is the best way to communicate these threats or concerns to the Canadian public?
I think through a variety of means. Again, as I said to one of your colleagues a few minutes ago, Mr. Chairman, one of the difficulties that we have is that we can't talk about operational details. We try in our annual report to give a bit of sense of this. I think the annual report of the CERC does the same thing. I don't think these have been particularly effective in drawing attention to these issues, so it was decided that we would try making a few public speeches. My predecessors have quite regularly spoken both to this committee, the opposite committee in the Senate, to academic institutions. My speech both to the RCMI and to CASIS was in that vein, to try and, in a general way, raise concerns that we thought people should be aware of.
Thank you. Mr. Kanya for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair. Sir, when I was asking you questions before, you indicated that you were interviewed June 21st and June 22nd by Mr. Mansbridge, and then you issued a clarification, or call it what you will, I think it was the next day. You also spoke after the interviews, you indicated already, with the National Security Advisor and the Minister, and you indicated to me that you could not remember whether you spoke with them before or after you issued your clarification. So I'm going to ask you to go back and to search what you need to search, your records, telephone records, whatever it may be, to determine whether you spoke with one or both of these individuals before you issued your clarification about your CBC comments, and also to advise us, to the best of your ability, as to what the conversations were, in particular, whether they asked you to issue something, and if so, if they suggested what that might be, with as much detail as possible. Please. Now, in terms of these concerns, you were just nodding. I take it that's a yes?
I beg your pardon. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. In terms of these concerns, you gave the initial speech in March, right? When did these concerns become formed, though? How much before March? And when did you actually start surveilling the cabinet ministers or municipal officials in relation to your speech? So when did these, because you, once again, you said real danger, and I'm taking you at your word. So I'm asking you, when did this real danger get formed in your mind, and how much before this March interview did this happen?
Mr. Chairman, as I think I answered the previous question, I was made aware, Fadden, was made aware of these two cases in a general way near the end of 2009. The service had been working on these for some time. I don't know quite how long. As I said earlier, was sufficiently concerned about the matter that I raised them with the National Security Advisor in early 2010, although largely with a view of finding out what protocol would apply should it be decided that we needed to contact anyone outside of the federal government.
Okay, so you indicated before that you raised this in the spring of 2010 with the National Security Advisor. And I assume that you said something, without details of the cases, I assume you said something to the effect of you had a concern, about a real concern, correct?
I don't remember the words, but something along those lines.
That's the idea. What did the National Security Advisor then do between when you had this conversation in the early spring of 2010 to when you gave your speech in March, and then you had your interviews in June, to present? Give me the timeline. Do you know whether the National Security Advisor spoke with the PCO, the PMO, the Minister in around the spring of 2010 onwards?
My understanding is she did not, although just to be clear, she is of the PCO, so
that's fine.
That's a different issue. I do not think that she did, because I did not provide enough detail to warrant, I think, informing either the Minister or anyone else. I gave her the sense that this was a file, these were a couple of files that the service had been looking at for some time. There was no immediate threat to national security. You know, nobody was going to blow up something or anything of that nature. I indicated that we were finishing our analysis and our inquiries, and we'd be getting back to her.
Let's say that you believe there was an imminent threat. Would you call the Minister?
It would depend on the nature of the threat. If the threat were immediate, I would call one of the first responders. I would call the police.
Okay. What circumstances would be involved for you to call the Minister to advise the Minister directly of this grave concern, this real danger, as you phrase it?
I think it's very difficult to answer that question. I think in the first instance, we would consult interdepartmentally. We can do that, you know, you can do that by phone. You can do it very, very quickly. If I thought that, you know, and I cannot imagine this happening, it's not practical. If we thought that because of foreign influence, you know, a decision by somebody in Canada was going to be skewed because of this foreign influence, and it was a significant decision, I can imagine calling the Minister.
Okay, so you have this concern, real danger, at some point in time in the spring of 2010, and you expressed it to the National Security Advisor, have you met with the minister at any point since the spring of 2010, either at your suggestion or the minister's suggestion, to advise the minister of any of these concerns?
No, Mr. Chairman, and again, because I do not think they merited ministerial attention. They had not reached that point, and they did not appear to us to be critical in the sense of immediate harm likely to take place.
But I don't...
Monsieur Laframboise, I'm sorry, your time is up.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Fadden, in the few moments I have, I will try to show you that you are no longer the man to be in your position. First of all, it started in 2009, but you said in the documented fact that we have here before us that it is a lack of attention on your part, and that is why this information was made public. That's true. That's what you said, right? Yes, Mr. Chair. Public. Made public, you mean the media. Through the media to the public. Regardless, you knew you were making a statement before 100 people or so that did not have a security clearance. So as far as I'm concerned, the fact that you would make such a statement before people, you know, that you were unsure that these individuals were highly cleared, that in and of itself is to me a sign of someone who says too much. Do you agree that you say too much? No, Mr. Chair. And can I explain why? Because the information that I mentioned to this group on March 26th, these were statements, non-classified information. I'm not referring to that particular statement. I'm referring to answers to questions you knew full well. You might have thought the media wasn't going to publish this, but you did provide intelligence or information about security matters that had not been transferred to the government. This was not high security issues. No, to state that 2 ministers in provinces and municipal representatives, this is not, perhaps it's not wise, but there was been no violation of any act. Mr. Fadden, you speak too much. This is what I'm saying. That is your opinion, sir. As the director of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, I don't think that is an important, I don't think that is a positive. Second, you've just repeated that there was nothing, that there were no security, national security matters at play, but you have discredited Canadian politicians as a whole. In so doing, you have chosen knowingly to create suspicion among the political class. You again reiterate that decisions made in Canada should be made by Canadians for Canadian reasons, by people that are loyal to Canada. So there are 2 people under investigation who might not be loyal. Is that correct or not? It is possible. So that would mean they are traitors. You did not want to use the term. This is not treason, Mr. Chair. The criminal code definition of treason does not apply in this case. So these are people that are not loyal, but they're not traitors. And absolutely not, Mr. Chair. Still, to discredit all politicians is a lack of judgment, I believe. A second reason for you no longer to be holding this position. Earlier on, my colleague from the NDP, or the chair, asked you to issue apology to the Chinese community because of the importance of this community in BC, perhaps felt a little more targeted by that community. You refused to issue any apologies. And again, I think this is a sign of someone who's not going to change. And if you cannot recognize your mistakes and cannot apologize for them, I think that is, again, a reason why you shouldn't be in this position. And if you are still here, it is because you're being protected by the Prime Minister. And the government was aware. And I have a great deal of difficulty with that. I will reiterate my colleague's question. Do you consider that you are still fit to hold this position? I have already answered this question, Mr. Chair. Very well.
You have 45 seconds.
Monsieur Fadin.
Mr. Fadden, what I would like to say today, it's not even a question, in fact, it's a comment, and I support my colleague. If the Prime Minister, once we've called, we're asking for you to step down. Even though you don't want to, we believe you are no longer fit to hold this position. If the Prime Minister does not decide to get rid of you in this position, that in fact he's complicit in this, complicit in the fact that your comments discredited the entire political class in Canada. If you're not willing to step down today, Mr. Fadden, it quite simply means that the Prime Minister is protecting you, and I'm asking myself this question. Did you ask for warrants for surveillance on these people? If so, the Minister of Public Safety was aware of that.
Mr. Fadden, do you have any comment?
I wasn't sure there was a question there.
Okay.
C'est un commentaire.
It is a comment.
Thank you. It's now me for 5 minutes. Mr. Fadden, if I have your evidence correct, you said that your explanation of making these comments at this function were that you lost track. Can you give Canadians assurance that you won't lose track and divulge sensitive information in the future? And if so, how can you give us that assurance?
First, Mr. Chairman, I want to repeat in English what I said in response to Monsieur Laframboise. The information that I gave was not classified. It wasn't sensitive in the national security sense. I repeat, I regret having given that level of detail, and I can assure you I won't be doing that again.
But surely you admit that something was improper, there'd be nothing to regret. What is it you regret exactly, sir, about what you divulged?
Giving the level of granularity that I did.
And you're saying that that was inappropriate, are you not?
I think I just said that, yes.
Yes. Now, you keep saying that you didn't violate national security, but I put to you, sir, that may be the case, but you did violate people's rights. I mean, there are cabinet ministers, there's a specific class of people in this country and municipal politicians in British Columbia who feel that a cloud of suspicion has been cast over them. Do you believe that they have a right to know if there's any accusations against them specifically or not?
As I was saying earlier, Mr. Chairman, once our report is completed, it will be given to government, and the government will decide what to do with it.
Do you not agree, sir, in a democracy, and I've noticed you've used that term in some of your comments, that people have a right to face their accuser, that people in a democracy shouldn't have to defend themselves against a shadowy accusation that may or may not apply to them?
I don't think anybody has to defend themselves against anything. You're taking a very small number of examples, and you're suggesting that the entire political class in British Columbia should feel threatened by what I've said. I submit that's incorrect.
Well, Mr. Fadden, I'll read you what the Lower Mainland Local Government Association has written to you. It said, "We are, however, deeply dismayed by the method you chose to announce your findings. Due to the broadness of your allegations, you have placed all of the 1,600 locally elected officials in BC under a cloud of suspicion. This is hardly a supportive environment for local politicians who strive to discharge their duties faithfully and expediently." I put to you, sir, that that's exactly what the 1,600 plus locally elected officials in British Columbia feel, is that you have smeared them all.
Well, I can't comment on what they've written to me. The reason I gave the two examples was to try and illustrate the nature of the problem that we have. If I had simply said there is foreign interference in Canada, you ladies and gentlemen would all be at your holidays right now. The point would not have been made. I repeat again, I regret the level of granularity, and it will not happen again.
Well, let me drill into what you call granularity. If you had said that one of the premiers of this country is under the influence of a foreign government, would you still hold your position that there's nothing inappropriate about that because you're not specifying precisely which one?
I think it's rather a hypothetical question, Mr. Chairman.
Well, you've made hypothetical allegations.
No, I did not.
You made real accusations.
I made accusations. I made a suggestion that they were under some level of influence.
But what you've done, sir, is you haven't just been anonymous. You have specified a class of people. You have narrowed the accusations down. Do you not see that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I've said I regret it.
Now, we saw in the United States the recent example of General McChrystal having to resign because, as a member of the security establishment, he made comments in the political realm that called into question the integrity or competence or fitness to hold office of certain elected officials. As a member of Canada's security establishment, Mr. Fadden, do you see a parallel there?
No, I do not, Mr. Chairman.
Why not?
Because national security is not at issue here.
No, but smearing politics politicians, whether they're local government officials or cabinet ministers, you don't think that that's calling into question the competence or fitness for office of a certain class of people?
Mr. Chairman, General McChrystal, as I understand it, smeared his commander-in-chief. I don't think there's an analogy here at all.
Well, that's true. He had the courage to name who he was talking about, and it wasn't just the commander-in-chief. It was Vice President Biden and other people. So you're hiding, sir, behind just a general class of people, and you think that that gets you off the hook?
I don't think it's a question, Mr. Chairman, of getting me off the hook. If Parliament inserted foreign interference in the Act, clearly there was the recognition that the foreign interference had to be exerted against someone. I can't think of very many other categories other than those who are engaged in public life.
Well, if you had
That's
said
not a revelation.
Sir, if you'd have said left-handed cabinet ministers of Romanian descent, would you still take the position that you didn't specify precisely who it was? Okay. Let me ask you this, Mr. Fadden. I put you that you are in violation of the Act because you have gathered, the Act authorizes the primary purpose, the gathering and collecting of information. That's what this is. This is information gathered under the Act, I take it. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay.
Or it's a conclusion drawn from information.
And it says information obtained shall not be disclosed except in accordance with Section 19. And it says there's 4 specific people that you may disclose information to a peace officer having jurisdiction, to the Minister of National Defense, to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, or disclosure within the opinion of the Minister, disclosure to someone who the Minister designates. Now, you didn't disclose that to those people. You disclosed it to the general public, correct?
I made a general statement about concerns about foreign interference. I do not believe Section 19 applies.
Well, it is information gathered under the Act that you disclosed. Now, Mr. Fadden, it also says that you may disclose for the purpose of performance of your duties and functions under this Act. My last question will be, which duty and function under this Act were you performing when you disclosed to the Canadian public that there were cabinet ministers and municipal politicians in British Columbia who were under the influence of foreign governments?
As I answered a few moments ago to one of your colleagues, Mr. Chairman, no departmental act, no agency act specifies that it is the duty of officers to talk to the public. It is implied.
That's your position?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now 5 minutes for Mr. McKenzie and sharing with Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to clarify something you said, Mr. Fadden. I wouldn't be on holidays. I'd be serving my constituents in my riding, and I think most of my colleagues would say the same thing. Mr. Fadden, you must understand that Canadians will read about this tomorrow morning. Sitting around their kitchen table will be left scratching their heads with your testimony. Why did you feel that the black tie audience of people you did not even know had a greater right to the information than the federal minister or affected provinces did not have that right to know?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think it was a question of right. The Act specifies that we must disclose intelligence information to the government. I was making a general statement. I don't think it applies. As I mentioned earlier, the general audience operates in this area of activity. I think they've understood what I gave them as an example of a concern, no more, no less. I would have informed my minister in the Privy Council office had I had real concerns and immediate concerns, but as I've indicated earlier, such concerns did not exist then and in truth don't exist now.
Mr. Payne. Mr. Payne.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Thank you for coming today, Mr. Fadden and Mr. Ellis and Mr. Dunn. This is certainly an important opportunity to clear the decks on this information. And I think it's critical to draw a firm line between influence and corruption. And let's be clear what we're talking about there. You mentioned in your opening remarks a threat continuum ranging from open meetings with foreign and Canadian officials to years of contact which a foreign actor may have convinced a Canadian official to adopt a position which the Canadian interest is not necessarily front and center. Indeed, the position may be even contrary to Canada's interest. So without getting into specific details on how CSIS carries out its statutory mandate, can you describe how CSIS makes its evaluations along this continuum?
Mr. Chairman, I think you're asking me to do something that's very difficult, and it's something that we tend to do on a case-by-case basis. As I tried to suggest in my opening remark, there really is a spectrum of activities that goes from the totally innocuous to somebody who, because of a secret influence or of a threat of some sort, changes his or her position. As you move towards the second part of that spectrum, it becomes, I think, increasingly obvious that there's a problem. If, over the years it became obvious, for example, that somebody was receiving benefits, that these benefits were not generally known, that the individual was in contact on a regular basis with an agent of a foreign power, we would become concerned on 2 points. One, that foreign influence was being exercised, and two, we'd be concerned about the Canadian being subjected to the kind of pressure that's really not appropriate. So we would then open a file and start looking at it in more detail. At some point, truthfully, it is a question of judgment within the service and interdepartmentally and eventually in the government whether or not you've passed that threshold that you were talking about.
Okay, so how does CSIS constitute sufficient concern, and what should be forwarded to the appropriate authorities?
Again, Mr. Chairman, I think it's very, very hard to generalize, but if we find over the years that there has been secret pressure, secret influence, secret meetings, the activity of the foreign power has to be clandestine. It has to be secret. A diplomat operating out of a foreign embassy does not qualify in this instance. But if the influence, if the benefits, if the activity is clandestine, if we become aware of it, it operates over a number of years. If the individual concerned is operating in an area that would be of interest to that foreign power, we eventually would form the view that as to whether or not there is a matter for concern, we would open a file and move it through the process that I talked about a little bit earlier.
Okay. Mr. Chair, how much?
I'm sorry, Mr.
How much time do I have?
You have 1 minute.
1 minute? Okay, thank you. We certainly know that CSIS are dedicated in protection of Canada's national interest and the safety of Canadians. And certainly it's one of the most monitored agencies in the world. You said there's merit CSIS being more open about the threats to our national security. And yes, what CSIS does is to prosecute an inherently secretive mandate. How do you reconcile these two seemingly irreconcilable differences?
I think that what CSIS, Mr. Chairman, has to do in secret is our investigations, our inquiries, our tradecraft, the information that we share with foreign countries. That has to be done in secret. And I think over the years, CSIS has demonstrated that it can do that very effectively. That does not mean, though, I think, that we cannot talk in general terms, as can the government, about threats to the security of Canada, be they espionage or terrorism or whatnot. So, yes, there's a line there that has to be drawn, and sometimes it's not easy to know exactly where to draw it. But the larger part of our activities, of our operations, must remain secret, but that doesn't mean that we can't talk in general about threats and the people that we're dealing with.
Monsieur Prou et Cagno
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair,
J'aurais un point d'ordre, Monsieur le Président.
point of order.
State your point of order, please.
Yeah, Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, it's been 1 hour and 45 minutes now that we've been questioning Mr. Fadden. I think we have gone around a few times. I would propose to my colleagues, make a friendly suggestion. I would like to table a motion, given that we are in the heart of this matter. I would call for Mr. Fadden to resign. I would ask for the Prime Minister to enable that, and I would ask this to be a friendly motion.
Mr. McKenzie?
Chair, I think the motion is out of order. This committee was asked to come today to talk to Mr. Fadden to receive some responses. I think, with all due respect to my friend from the bloc, that she's jumped to a conclusion without having all of the facts and maybe not even considering the information that was delivered to the committee today. And I believe, as I said, that her motion would be out of order simply because this committee wasn't brought forward today to deal with motions. As a matter of fact, I think there was discussion amongst many of the parties. There would be no motions at this committee. So I think, Mr. Chair, you would be right in ruling it out of order.
If I may have the indulgence of the committee, I'm going to confer with the clerk. It's my understanding that points of order are not actually debatable, so if I may just consult with the clerk for a moment. After consultation with the clerk, I'm going to rule the point of order out of order. It's my opinion that the point of order is a substantive one, and of course, by the rules of this committee, a substantive motion requires 48 hours notice, but I will regard Madame Morani's notice right now to constitute that notice, and if she will put that in writing to the committee, then the committee will have filed with it a notice that will be dealt with at the next sitting of the committee.
Thank you.
Yes, you will have your 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, the CSIS director repeated today that foreign influence remains a concern and a threat. Obviously, it's up to the Prime Minister and Minister Taves to clear the air by addressing this. Monsieur Fadden,
Mr. Fadden, recently the Department of Justice in the United States, in fact, made a statement. There were accusations against 3 Russian spies arrested last week. There's a 4th that is still at large, indicating that these people had essentially said they were Canadians so as to cover their tracks. In the course of their espionage work in the U.S., was your service aware of these facts? Mr. Fadden. Not before the statements issued by the Department of Justice.
That foreign spies might be posing as Canadians to undertake espionage activities.
I think it's something that we should be concerned about. It's happened over the years, and Canadian federal government and Canadian provinces have made it more and more difficult for such individuals to acquire Canadian identities, but it is still possible. I think one of the reasons that Canada is so attractive is that we're so well viewed around the world, and our passports are accepted virtually anywhere. So there is a level of concern.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fadden, the timing of your June 21st and 22nd interviews with Mr. Mansbridge, how was that selected?
It was selected by the corporation.
Did you get any, did you review that with the Minister of Public Safety or the PCO or PMO or the National Security Advisor?
They were made aware that that was the schedule proposed by the CBC and that I was proposing to agree.
And did any of those individuals give you permission to do that? Did they approve it?
I don't, given that the general idea of interviews had already been approved, I wasn't seeking approval. I was informing them in the event that they knew something they might want to tell me about.
Okay. And did you advise them as to what you would be saying? Were they aware of the fact that the allegations would be made about provincial cabinet ministers and municipal officials?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Now, for me today, this is the point. I don't know, we don't know whether what you're saying is accurate or not. That's information that's classified that you're providing to other sources. So I'm not here to say you're right or wrong. I'm here to find out, if possible, what you exactly were saying, what the details are, which you've indicated you cannot provide here today, in terms of the names of the individuals and the specific details. But this part of it, I think, is key for today, which is, in the spring of 2010, you advised the National Security Advisor of these concerns, and you had these concerns, which you indicated came about at the end of 2009. That's when you were first made aware of these cases. So what I find surprising, as a Member of Parliament and as a Canadian, what I find surprising is that the Prime Minister or the Prime Minister's office or the Minister of Public Safety did not contact you, meet with you, ask for details, in any way get involved in circumstances where you've called this a real danger after you made these concerns aware to the National Security Advisor in the spring of 2010. And what I'm wondering is when you gave this interview, whether you knew, I know you knew it, but whether you deliberately provided this concern in the public so that Canadians would know that this concern existed, because the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's office and the Minister of Public Safety was doing nothing about this that you had expressed to the National Security Advisor. So I'm taking you at your word. I'm believing you that these concerns exist because I have no information to the contrary. But what I do know is, although you expressed these concerns in the spring of 2010 to the National Security Advisor, the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's office, and the Minister of Public Safety did nothing that you can tell us on this and didn't even contacted you. And I'm wondering about that and why that would have happened, that they wouldn't have, in my view, done their jobs and dealt with you.
I think, Mr. Chairman, there are two or three components to that question. One, as I indicated earlier, when I spoke to the National Security Advisor, it was to express a general concern that we were working on a couple of files. It was a heads up. We give heads up to the Centre daily on a whole range of issues. Had we thought that it was a matter that merited the attention of the Minister, I would have drawn it to the attention of the Minister, and I suspect the NSA would have done so to the Prime Minister. But I repeat again, the files that we're working on were not immediate. There was no immediate danger. There was no direct critical violation of national security. As I do on any number of files, I was drawing to her attention. She has a coordinating role in the security and intelligence community. I was telling her that sometime in the weeks or months ahead we would be coming forward with a couple of files. And I asked her how, if these files went forward, should we draw these to the attention of elements other than the federal government.
Thank you, Ms. Block, for the final 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for an opportunity to get back to a question that I had hoped to fit into my first round. Just to refresh your memory, it was in regards to the case of alleged Russian spies, more specifically a story which ran in the Vancouver Sun on June 29th. And I do want to quote that story really quickly, and then I have a series of questions. The FBI has broken up a Russian spy ring, some of whose members were posing as Canadian citizens, the Department of Justice announced Monday. 8 deep cover agents working for the Russian Federation and 2 others on a similar mission were arrested Sunday in New Jersey, Virginia, and Boston. All are suspected agents of the SVR, Russia's foreign spy agency. The arrests come 4 years after the RCMP arrested an SVR agent who was living in Montreal as Paul William Hampel. 3 of the agents arrested on Sunday had assumed identities as Canadians named Donald Howard Heathfield, Tracy Lee Ann Foley, and Patricia Mills. And finally, a 4th suspect, Christopher Metzos, also claimed to be Canadian. He is still at large. My questions are these. What is the end game for such agents? And what are they trying to achieve? If you wouldn't mind talking about the methods that they are employing. And then finally, could you provide us with a sense of how the threat to Canada compares to that experienced by our close allies?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I think the end game is very similar to the one that we were talking about here today. There are a number of foreign powers, in this case the Russian Federation, which is very interested in acquiring influence on the development of policy in the United States. This can be done in any number of ways. In this particular case, it appears that the agents of Russia were insinuating themselves into the U.S. economy, into U.S. society, with the long-term view, again I say this is an important element, with the long-term view of being able to either acquire information or exercise influence. What happens in these cases, generally speaking, is that when a moment comes up that a decision is important for the foreign power, some attempt is made to communicate with their agents in place, and they're asked to try and influence the decision-making process through the people that they have there or through themselves. The methodology that they use is, and there's no great state secret here, it's the same as anyone would use to try and get someone to do something else. You try and develop a relationship. You try and find some means of exercising pressure. Both are basically usable in all cases. Very often what's done is you find a common interest, you develop a relationship over time, and before you know it, you have an individual thinking slightly differently. In other cases, and it's one that we also worry about, you know, the foreign power exercises influence on the Canadian because they're being threatened with one thing or the other. So we didn't talk a lot about this during this 2-hour period, but one of the things that we're trying to do in dealing with foreign interference is actually protect Canadians from this kind of pressure by foreign powers. Is the threat in Canada the same as the United States or greater? As you mentioned in your remarks, we had a similar case in 2006 and we had others in 1996. I would say, and again, I think this is probably logical, the United States is the premier power in the world today. I suspect they get more attention than we do. But we take a lot of decisions. We have a lot of information that we share with the Americans and a vast number of other countries, so Canada is of considerable interest. So I would say that it would be difficult to compare exactly, but I would say we're probably of lesser interest, but still of material interest to a foreign power.
And finally, just to recap, we've talked a lot about the chain of command and the appropriate levels by which information is passed. Can you just run through that again for me in terms of who supervises CSIS and the chain of command from yourself up to the minister?
I'm accountable to the minister for the management of the service. And in having said that, in the management of the security and intelligence, the national security world, the Prime Minister has appointed a national security advisor who has a coordinating role. So I wouldn't say that I report to the national security advisor, but she's an important player in all of this. So a lot of the information that we would give to the minister would also be given to the national security advisor, although in some cases information given to the NSA would not be given to the minister because it wouldn't meet that threshold where we think a minister needs to be informed. If I can take advantage of this just to make one last comment, a number of you have indicated that you're either taking me at face value or not on these matters that we're talking about. I would remind you that Parliament decided a while ago that the Security Intelligence Review Committee has access to absolutely everything that we have, and I would be willing to wager that they will be reporting in some detail about whether or not the threats that I've talked about and the details that I've alluded to are true. So you decided, you parliamentarians, that we were going to do this kind of control through the CERC. They have been very effective at doing this through the years.
Thank you, Mr. Fadden. That concludes our question period. Mr. Fadden, Mr. Ellis, Mr. Dunn, on behalf of the entire committee, I'd like to thank you for attending with us here today. The Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security stands adjourned.